Handed from three. Hull comes soaring in again. Just uncanny knack. And cashes in.
Is on the upper left wing. Just got inside, circles around, pure.
Game 3 wasn't basketball. It was a straight-up setup. The Fever had the upper hand, fighting for every possession, and then out of nowhere, the whistles rained down like a storm. In an instant, Indiana's momentum was stolen, and suddenly the Aces were living at the free throw line. Fans inside Gainbridge saw it unfold, social media lit up with outrage, and the box score tells the whole story. Aliyah Wilson was tossing elbows like she was in a wrestling ring, while Aliyah Boston couldn't even challenge clean without getting flagged. The Aces didn't earn that win, they were gifted it. And the saddest part? The spotlight got yanked away from Lexie Hull's gutsy career-defining performance. But here's the truth, this isn't new for Indiana. Game 3 was ugly, but from the start of this series, the Fever weren't just playing Vegas. They were battling the refs too. Everyone remembers Game 1. Vegas clawed back not with buckets, but with freebies at the stripe. Indiana's physical defense standing tall, bodying up. Every time, it somehow ended with Vegas shooting free throws. That tilted the floor right from the opening tip. By Game 2, the pattern wasn't subtle anymore. It was loud and it was lopsided. Call after call piled up, killing Indiana's rhythm and handing Vegas lifelines they didn't deserve. The whole flow of basketball was being choked out, and Indiana had no choice but to fight through chaos just to stay alive. And then came the question tossed at Indiana afterward. Steph or you, why don't you think you were able to find any flow? And when that was the case, what are you trying to do to jumpstart things maybe on the defense? That's not a question. It's an insult after what we all just watched. The whistles never stopped. They piled up quarter after quarter until little frustrations turned into a full-blown chokehold on Indiana's rhythm.
Sets a screen where she extends her leg out, but of course they call the foul on Lexie Hull for Aliyah Wilson's illegal screen. Then Aliyah Wilson and Alyssa Smith totally foul Michaela Timpson, but there is no call. Could have took a 1-point lead going into half. Now we're up by 3 and they call a foul that isn't a foul. So we don't get calls when we're getting hit, but the Aces get a.
By Game 3, Stephanie White had no choice but to call it out. This wasn't just a trend anymore. It was a wall the Fever couldn't climb no matter how hard they fought. The breaking point came in the third quarter. Aliyah Boston tried to contest a foul call on Jackie Young, and White instantly signaled for the review. The bench was on its feet, ready for justice, but the refs straight up ignored it. Seconds later, Chelsea Gray sank a dagger 3, and just like that, the arena flipped. The roar of Indiana's momentum was replaced by gasps of disbelief as the lead evaporated before their eyes. Indiana had worked too hard for separation, only to see it erased in seconds by another whistle and another Vegas bucket. Fans inside Gainbridge went wild, arms waving, voices cracking as they screamed at officials who acted like nothing was happening. Within minutes, clips of the exchange were everywhere online. Breakdown after breakdown showed how the ignored review wasn't just a mistake. It swung the entire game on one possession. And those same videos? They exposed the Aces' dirty tricks, flops, sneaky pushes, and constant elbows that somehow didn't matter when the jersey said Las Vegas.
It's a foul call with a 3-point game for, I don't know why they called that foul, but it's the third quarter and they want them to win. So here we go. Aces up by 3. They call another foul for Aliyah Wilson that isn't a foul. All right, so then they call another foul on the Fever that isn't a foul. And then to end the game after it's out of control because the Fever had a 6-point lead, but they kept calling fouls, another foul for Aliyah Wilson that's not a foul. Ball don't lie, Asia. Missed 11 shots in a row during this game.
Aliyah Wilson could lower her shoulder into Boston. Defenders could be tossed to the hardwood, and flailing arms were magically good defense as long as it came in red and black. But when Indiana played physical, every bump looked like a crime scene. That's what makes this sting so much. It didn't feel like talent taking over. It felt like refs tilting the court, whistles in hand like weapons, handing Vegas momentum they never truly earned. That kind of officiating meltdown would have broken most teams, but not Indiana, and definitely not Lexie Hull. She refused to let this game be remembered only for bad calls, and in doing so, she nearly flipped the entire playoff series on its head. Think about it. How often do you see a player who the injury report says probably shouldn't even be playing come out and redefine the storyline of a playoff game? That's exactly what Lexie did.
Why don't you think you were able to find any flow, and when that was the case, what are you trying to do to jumpstart things? maybe on the defense.
Well, it's hard for us to find flow when there's a foul call every 10 seconds. I mean, it just really is. And when they're at the free throw line, we can't get up and down the floor. And that's a challenge. They were much more aggressive and physical defensively. We didn't counter that with our off-ball actions or with our back cuts. So they took us out of our comfort zone. I mean, offense is about rhythm, it's about timing, it's about spacing. We allowed them to do that.
Heading into Game 3, she was questionable at best. Her back had flared up in Game 1, her practice time was limited, and even in warm-ups you could see the stiffness in her movements. Fans weren't expecting miracles. They were just hoping she could give her teammates a few minutes of relief. But Lexie didn't come to survive. She came to fight. Instead of a cameo, she delivered a performance Fever fans will talk about for years. On a jump ball against Jackie Young, she pushed through obvious pain, battling for every possession. And then the box score rolled in. 16 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 blocks, and a steal. She shot an incredible 6 for 10 from the field, splashing 3 triples that felt like oxygen every time Vegas tried to take control. Those threes weren't just shots. They were lifelines, tying her with a franchise playoff record across 2 games. 8 total made threes. Nobody predicted that from a player whose status was hanging by a thread just hours earlier. And when she dropped her playoff career-high 16 against the defending champs, it wasn't the numbers that blew people away. It was the grit behind them. Every scramble, every rebound, every loose ball, Lexie threw her body into plays most injured players wouldn't dare touch. That's why Game 3 didn't belong to the Whistles or the Aces. It belonged to Lexie Hull, writing her name into Fever history with pure heart. The cameras told the whole story. Lexie Hull grimacing in pain, face twisted with discomfort, yet still muscling out frontline aces, fighting for rebounds she had no business grabbing. She threw herself on the hardwood, wrestling taller players for boards, then somehow gathered the strength to rise up and sink clutch shots. Every time the refs tried to drain Indiana's energy with another whistle, Lexie's hustle pumped it right back in. Even when Vegas was getting gift trips to the stripe, she refused to let possessions die, keeping the Fever alive with pure grit. That's why the Gainbridge crowd felt every moment with her. They knew they were watching a player risk everything because her team needed her. And that's exactly why the whole night feels twisted. On the same night Lexie Hull delivered the best playoff game of her career, the conversation wasn't about her heroics. It was hijacked by the officiating chaos that flipped the scoreboard upside down.
Wilson is 1 for 12 as a foul is called on Boston, and that will be number 2 on Aliyah Boston.
You saw Indiana picking up full court pressure defensively, and if you're Aliyah Boston, that's the one spot on the floor you do not want to get a foul called.
And Stephanie White is trying to challenge it and did not call the timeout in time. Gray in the corner.
A performance that deserved headlines got buried under controversy. Maybe that's why Hull feels like the perfect symbol of this Indiana squad. Battered, doubted, but never backing down. And if Lexie was the face of grit, then what does that say about Vegas, whose so-called superstar was nowhere to be found? Imagine being hyped as the face of the league, an MVP candidate, and going nearly 3 full quarters without a single bucket. That's exactly what happened to Aliyah Wilson. She opened the game with a smooth 3-pointer that looked like the start of a takeover. But then, brick after brick. By halftime, she was just 1 for 11 from the field, a shocking number for someone of her stature. She limped to the finish line with 13 points on 20 shots, 6 for 20 overall, a stat line that wasn't just below her standard. It was downright unrecognizable for an MVP frontrunner. For any WNBA starter, that type of shooting night is ugly, but for an MVP candidate, it's flat out brutal. Instead of owning the paint or setting the tone like she usually does, Aliyah Wilson drifted to the perimeter, settling for forced fadeaways and looking more and more frustrated as Aliyah Boston smothered her into awkward, uncomfortable shots again and again. And here's what eats at fans. Vegas still walked away with the win. They didn't even need Wilson to be herself because everything else kept falling their way. Whether it was whistles bailing them out or her teammates stepping up, the Aces found just enough to survive. Jackie Young lit it up with 25 points, drilling momentum-killing shots every time Indiana tried to rally. Chelsea Gray chipped in a steady 15, hitting daggers in the mid-range and tough layups when their offense stalled. And even Alyssa Smith, who's had stretches of inconsistency this season, found her rhythm, making timely plays on both ends just when Vegas needed them most. So while their supposed superstar was clanking shot after shot, the rest of the squad patched things together. And with officiating tilting in their favor, they rode that wave straight back into control.
A recap from last night. So A'ja Wilson pushes Howard in the back. Howard pushes her in the back. It's a foul on Howard. Look at this. Aliyah Boston gets totally fouled by Alyssa Smith. Like, it's obvious, but no call. And then A'ja Wilson gets the call for not half as much. And then Alyssa Smith gets the call for not even getting touched. Here's a replay just to prove it to you. Yep, didn't get.
But what added insult was the way media spun it afterward. Wilson's box score screamed struggle, but instead of calling it what it was, plenty of outlets dressed it up, talking about her rebounds, her blocks, or her all-around impact. Others shifted the narrative entirely, praising Vegas's depth instead of addressing the obvious. What got buried? The reason she struggled wasn't random. It was Aliyah Boston. She locked Wilson down on nearly every possession, denying her space, cutting off her lanes, and forcing her into the kind of shots that tank any efficiency. When an MVP shoots 30% on 20 attempts, that's not just an off night. That's elite defense at work. That deserves just as much recognition as any highlight reel bucket. Sure, Wilson still threw her weight around physically, but those moments didn't demand respect the way Boston's defense did. They exposed just how much one superstar was rattled when matched with a rising one. There were elbows flying, sneaky undercuts on box outs, and wild arms smacking into Indiana players. Yet whistles stayed silent while Vegas kept cashing in. And then Becky Hammon had the nerve afterward to complain that A'ja Wilson only got one free throw in 38 minutes. The irony is almost laughable. Because let's be real, this is the same Vegas team that lived at the foul line for 3 straight games. When you're stacking up more freebies than your opponent every night, crying about calls rings hollow, it's theater, not truth. Here's the reality. Indiana locked A'ja Wilson down. They did exactly what a team is supposed to do against the league's best player, and yet they still walked away with an L. Not because Vegas outplayed them, but because whistles softened the blow every time. That's why the Aces' win feels so empty.
Practically a football check, and the Aces score. So now the Aces cut it to 2, and then A'ja Wilson sets an illegal screen, and they tie things up. And then Lexie Hull gets called for a foul for doing nothing when they just had 2 illegal screens they didn't call. All right, so this is fair. Same thing happens on the other side, but they don't call a foul for Kelsey Mitchell. So Aliyah Boston gets called for this foul for getting her arm grabbed, but Stephanie White can't challenge. They won't let her. That's the second time this game they didn't let her have her challenge. And then A'ja Wilson starts.
Wilson didn't show why she's the face of the league. She got saved by refs and teammates who dragged her across the finish line. That's not dominance. That's survival under protection. And now the spotlight shifts to Gainbridge Fieldhouse, where Indiana stares down their last chance to rewrite this poisoned story. Game 4 isn't just another playoff night, it's survival mode. Down 2-1, battered by injuries and forced to battle more than just their opponent. The Fever have to prove they belong against a franchise that's been gifted break after break all series long. One loss and their season ends. It's that sharp. And here's the kicker. Becky Hammon is already setting up her next excuse. She's warning that officiating might bend toward Indiana in Game 4, raising alarms about Fever physicality. The irony drips off every word. After 3 games where calls leaned almost exclusively toward Vegas, now she's painting her team as the victims. The stage is set, and the drama at Gainbridge is about to explode. Game 4 at Gainbridge isn't just basketball, it's a battleground. Indiana walks in carrying the scars of 3 games where whistles and breaks tilted the floor, and now they stand one step from elimination. But survival brings out something raw, and the Fever have made a habit of fighting with their backs to the wall. This isn't just about X's and O's, it's about pride. Aliyah Boston has already shown she can go toe-to-toe with A'ja Wilson and win the matchup straight up. Lexie Hull is banged up, but her hustle has already carved her into a fan favorite. The heartbeat of the roster. And Kelsey Mitchell, when she finds her rhythm, she flips the entire script of how Indiana scores. That trio doesn't just give Indiana a chance, it gives them belief. And that's what makes Sunday night electric. Because it's not only Indiana versus Vegas, it's Indiana versus the narrative. A narrative that's painted them as too young, too injured, too unproven to hang with champions. Yet here they are, standing on their home floor, ready to fight for everything. Vegas? They're the defending champs, but the cracks are showing. Wilson's shot isn't falling, Jackie Young is stretched thin, and Chelsea Gray's steadying hand won't be enough if Gamebridge turns into a madhouse.
Help comes. Kick out. Hull will fire. And hit from 3. Last 2 positions inside from Indiana. Smith tied up by Hull. And a jump ball between...
The Aces have leaned on whistles to cover their flaws, but in Indiana, with 17,000 voices shaking the building, those calls won't come easy. So Game 4 becomes bigger than just staying alive. It's about respect. Respect for Boston's defense. Respect for Hull's grit. Respect for a franchise that refuses to roll over even when the odds are stacked high. If the Fever rise up and steal back momentum, this series flips on its head, and suddenly the champs aren't in control anymore. They're in trouble. Sunday night isn't just a must-win. It's a chance to rewrite the entire season in one unforgettable storm. If Game 4 becomes the turning point, history will remember it as the night Indiana drew a line in the sand. This isn't just about advancing, it's about proving they belong on the biggest stage, no matter how many obstacles are thrown their way. Think about it. Through 3 games, the Fever have dealt with injuries, questionable calls, and the defending champs at full force. Yet they've never folded. Every punch Vegas has thrown has been met with a counterpunch from Indiana. And now, with their season on the line, the Fever get one final chance to show the league they're more than just a young team happy to be here. They're a squad demanding respect. The Aces? Sure, they've got banners, they've got star power, but cracks are spreading fast. Wilson's confidence is shaky. Jackie Young has carried the load for too long, and their supposed depth hasn't been tested in a hostile road playoff game like this. Gamebridge isn't just a building tonight, it's a weapon. The crowd will rattle every shot, shake every possession, and suffocate Vegas with pressure they can't control. And this is where Indiana can strike. Boston battling in the paint, Mitchell rediscovering her scoring touch, Hull laying her body on the line again. That's not just a game plan, that's a formula for survival. The Fever don't need perfection, they need heart, grit, and one explosive run to flip the scoreboard. Because here's the truth, if Indiana takes Game 4, suddenly everything changes.
Side of the floor, just to clear out, letting Jackie Young go to work.
Jackie Young with 17 points. Boston to the corner, Hull, catch, fire, and hit. Correct call. Evans dishes. Ray whips a pass inside. What a denial from Lexie Hull.
The Hull able to save the play.
12-point game, a little under 2.5 to go. Hull hits Indiana's first field goal.
Vegas loses their safety net. The narrative swings, and a series everyone thought was wrapped up becomes a war. The Fever wouldn't just be surviving, they'd be announcing themselves as the future of the WNBA, ready to shake the power structure to its core. This isn't just another game. It's the night Indiana can turn pain into power and force the league to pay attention. If Indiana strikes those weak spots, everything changes. The series tilts on its head. Game 4 isn't just about survival. It's about making a statement for what's coming next year when Caitlin Clark is back in uniform and this Fever core gets even sharper. Don't forget, Indiana didn't lose Game 3, it was stolen. They built a lead, locked down defensively, and then watched officials turn it into free points for Vegas. That wasn't basketball. That was interference dressed up as competition. And that's why Game 4 is so much bigger than staying alive. It's about exposing just how fragile those Aces wins look when whistles stop bailing them out. If Hull guts it out again through pain, if Mitchell finally catches fire, and if Boston keeps punishing Wilson in the paint, Gamebridge will explode into chaos. Add 17,000 fans shaking the arena to that formula, and suddenly this isn't Vegas' series anymore. It's Indiana's fight to take back. The Fever's season isn't over. It's about to get louder, wilder, and more dangerous for anyone standing in their way.
Back to Hull, wide open three is good.
The floor that she wants, doesn't it?
It does. Mitchell, connect. Here's Mitchell. Mitchell, one more. You bet.
Do you think Indiana can bounce back and shock the champs? If yes, drop a "Let's Go Fever" in the comments, like this video, share it with other fans, and hit subscribe with notifications on so you never miss the next update. Click the video on the screen, and we'll see you in the next one.